The idea of doing our story work probably seems like an abstract and intangible thing for the vast majority of us. Isn't it just new age jargon for Silicon Valley founders or permanently self-reflective podcasters? It's often said that to find happiness, we must first find meaning in our life. But you can't have either of these before first knowing your story and what ultimately is driving you to achieve things in life. If all of what I've said is true, that would lead to the conclusion that you can't find happiness without first knowing or finding your story. Today's guest, Dr. Joey Liu, is renowned for helping her clients do their sacred story work. She's also a wife, mother, educator, coach, and much more. The conversation is quite deep in parts as we tapped into some self-reflective work and insecurities I've had in looking at my own story. We start off a little bit different today as Joey takes us through a guided meditation. So if you are driving, then I would advise skip through this using the chapter list. But if you are in a safe place to do so, please join us. It is a really nice way to kick things off. Joey and I delve into a wide array of topics, including Kundalini yoga, the importance of knowing your values before starting your vision, Joey and I's experience with being told we think too much, how to trace negative self-talk back to where it came, how to hear, listen to, and trust your inner voice, Joey's tips on how to find a community, how Joey manifested her husband, and much more. I hope you enjoy my conversation with Dr. Joey Liu. Hey everyone, just a quickie before we get into the conversation. The podcast is always going to be free, so I'm never going to ask you to pay for anything. But if you could do me the kindness of subscribing and maybe leaving a review, that would mean the absolute world to me. Thank you and enjoy the episode.
Have you ever done some breathing techniques like alternate nostril breathing?
I have actually, yeah.
Oh, you have tried that. Okay. I wanted to offer it because I know that when I introduce it to clients who haven't tried that type of breath work, they usually have a really positive response, and they're usually surprised at how quickly it works to sort of center you and calm you down. So we could do either or both.
Yeah, that'd be cool. Yeah, because like one of them is like parasympathetic, one's sympathetic, right?
Yes, and it helps to balance like your right and left brain, your yin and your yang, right? And so it's just bringing you into a state of balance completely.
Yeah, beautiful. Let's get into it. You happy to lead?
So let's start with the alternate nostril breathing, and then we can go into more of a guided meditation as well. We'll try to keep it a little short. I can get lost in the meditation, so I'm just kind of mentioning to myself to just keep it a few minutes so we can start the podcast. Okay, so for guided or for alternate nostril breathing, you're going to use your index finger and your thumb. And the idea is that you will breathe in through one nostril, so you'll close the other. So I'm going to breathe in through, this is my right nostril, and then we want to exhale through the same nostril, we'll transfer. We'll exhale through the alternate nostril, then take a breath in, pinch, and exhale through the alternate nostril. So I almost imagine like I'm tracing a rainbow.
Yeah.
So it never goes in a full circle. You're like tracing a rainbow. So if you want to try, breathe in, then switch fingers, pinch the other side, and exhale through the alternate nostril. Now keep that finger pinched and inhale through the same nostril. Switch your fingers and exhale. You can close your eyes while you're doing this. Another deep inhale, same nostril. Switch fingers. Exhale. You'll want to keep going with alternating. So inhale through the same nostril. Try to go as slowly as you can on the inhale. See if you can hold that breath at the top, focusing on your third eye in your brow point, and then releasing the air through the alternate nostril by switching your fingers. And release that breath as slowly as you can. Really start to draw your awareness into your belly, collapsing all the air, squeezing the air out. Now alternate your fingers. Take a deep breath in. And then keep going at your own pace here. And I'll keep going as well. Let's do one more deep breath. And when that breath has completely left your body, you can drop your hands, let them settle on your lap, your eyes still closed. Let's prepare to fill our bellies with a nice big gulp of air. And as we're breathing in, let's visualize all the goodness we're drawing in from the universe through our breath, filling our lungs, our belly, sending it further and further down our body. Hold here, focusing at the brow point. When you can't hold anymore, take another sip of air and then slowly exhale, slowing down everything, listening to the sound of your own breath, visualizing the release of anything not serving you. And here we'll draw in our next breath, bringing in all the goodness from the universe. Maybe this time you visualize a color that feels good to you in this breath. Hold. Draw your focus back at the brow point. Let it expand into the universe. Connect with the oneness and slowly release, finding the areas that aren't serving you in this moment, letting them go, noticing where they're leaving, noticing the areas that are tight, where our breath gets stuck. Release, 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 and then draw another breath in. Now breathe at your own pace, continuing to visualize, grounding into your body with each breath, sending your weight deeper into the bottom of your spine, connecting with earth, feeling the support, noticing the weight in your feet, in your seat, bringing in all the nourishment from the ground, up through your lungs, up through your voice, up to your third eye, up to your crown, connecting with the heavens. Returning back to yourself, one with everything, connected to everything that is good, releasing everything you no longer need, calling in whatever you need in this moment, filling your being with gratitude, finding rest, finding calm. And let's make this our last breath. And as we do, let's hold it up at the top as long as we can. And in this pause, let's really notice and be still. Here we have everything we need. Slowly let that breath go. And when it feels good to you, you can flutter your eyes open and find something to focus your sight on, coming back to this moment.
Thank you.
How do you feel, Jason? You're welcome.
Yeah, that was great. Yeah, that was really beautiful. Thank you so much. It's a nice way to start. I hope you were able to enjoy it as much because you were guiding it.
Yeah, always.
When I was doing my course, I remember the instructor telling me that I couldn't ever do the meditation at the same time. which I don't know if that is standard practice, but she was like, because if you've got your eyes closed and someone's like having a bad time, you wouldn't be able to pick up on it. I kind of get that, but then I suppose there's another side to it, which is like there's something beautiful about the instructor doing it at the same time. You know, I mean, yeah, interesting. But yeah, that was that was awesome. Interesting. Like, I'm always like really cognizant, and I should probably not say this now because everyone else will notice it. But I notice my breathing sounds quite a lot on the because I normalize the volume, and then you can hear me in the background with my like noisy nostrils when a guest's talking. And then I was doing it then, and I was like, I'll hear a guest like chatting, and then you can just hear me go. And like, and I'm like, give it like it's so I don't know. I suppose in one way it's kind of cool because there's a lot of emotion in the breath, like these kind of sighs. But then sometimes I'm like, I sound like I'm in like a bit of a mood, and I'm just breathing, but I don't know. But yeah, when I was breathing up my left nostril, then it was like a bit tight and kind of like. Like
stuck. I love it. First of all, that you're so connected with your breath and the sound. And I'm calling in my yoga teacher who guided me to become certified in Kundalini yoga. And she would always encourage us to connect further with our sound. And so one of the masks that we wear that many folks wear is, even limiting our breath because we don't want to be those noisy breathers. And then you come into your yoga class, or you come into that space, even if you're meditating by yourself, and we're still so tight, right? Like, who are we performing for? So a big part of my practice when I was just learning and training was to give myself that full permission to release. And I mean, breath, think about the wind. Air, like air moving there, it's a sensory experience and it's multidimensional, and you can feel it when you're really releasing the breath. You can feel the air going through your channels and you can hear it, and you should be experiencing the fullness of that experience. So my beautiful yoga teacher Priya would be like, Jason, well done. Well done in that meditation. And well done even in the conversations to be fully breathing. Like, what a celebration of life.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah. Oh, thank you. Yeah, it's a good point, isn't it? I think we get in this like artificial world, or what seems like a very artificial and superficial world, where we're always trying to be perfect and whiten our teeth and fill in the blank. It's like we're trying to like sanitize everything and like, oh, like the way I breathe is weird, so I'll like cover that up and like you say, masking and yeah, interesting. Yeah, let it fucking flow. That's what I say.
Let it flow. Let it flow.
What is it about Kundalini that explain to people what Kundalini is, how it differs from traditional mind would you mind just telling us about that?
Yeah, so Kundalini yoga really it's beyond just meditation. Of course, there's deep meditative practices, but it is an ancient form of yoga, and Kundalini really refers to the energy that travels through the spine. And so all of the kriyas, which are the sort of, you can think of it like exercise sets, but it's movement and meditation and breath, are cultivated by the gurus who cultivated them, so long ago, to get the energy moving through the spine and then through the entire body, and then not to get too deep, but into the 10 bodies, which include our aura and connection into the universe. So it's not like, the main difference is, if you've been to many like hatha or vinyasa classes and gone to sort of a flow yoga class, you'll find some of the movements and the poses similar, but there's probably more movements, like swifter movements, twisting movements that may not be as common in your common hatha or vinyasa class. It's less poses and holds. Maybe a little bit more chanting and like Vedic meditation. So like you'll be saying words and chanting in your meditations rather than the silent meditations that probably Western yoga classes are more accustomed to.
So is hatha, sorry to interject, so like the regular yoga, like in its like most cut down form that you would imagine it just in some random class in that'll be
like a
happening around the world.
vinyasa.
Vinyasa.
Yeah.
Okay. And that's, mainly movement, and there wouldn't be. Okay. Yeah. And then what's hatha?
You know what? I'm not sure. I'd have to look up to see the finite difference. It's
That's all
been
right.
years
Sorry, I'm
since I studied. No.
that's
But
I randomly brought it up, so.
no, that's okay. So the flow types and the hatha, both are very similar. I mean, they're all branches of yoga, but rather than the long holds and poses, I mean, have you ever been to a yoga class where like you're doing this kind of movement before? Have you? Oh, beautiful. So that's like common in Kundalini. So these type of twists versus I think that many of the yoga class, the vinyasa yoga classes I've been to in like Western type studios, you're doing downward dog, tree pose, like those long stretch holds. That's less common in Kundalini. Kundalini is more about the movements, really connecting with breath. So we'll have like one common Kundalini type of breath work is the ego eradicator. I don't know if you'll see my hands is gonna. And so you will stick your arms up like this, like plugging them into the sky, and then you will pump with breath of fire in your belly. So you go. So there's a lot of like movement based. I mean, when I say movement, it's a lot faster of a pace in Kundalini yoga than in some of those more relaxing, slower yoga classes, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I loved watching your nostrils going back and forth when you're doing the breath of fire.
Yeah.
You'll
completely like lose your, like you can't maintain those masks or those like you know it when you're practicing Kundalini, like you just let it go. You just let it all go, and you will. I mean, every time I do a Kundalini Kriya, like you can just feel your whole body buzzing with energy, and then it's really important to ground back into the earth afterwards.
Yeah. Oh, that's so cool. Thank you. Thank you for walking us through that. So, all right, let's get into some stuff. So I want to talk about. So your work focuses on. What's the line you say? Every leader, every person deserves to have a story around the campfire. Is that right? Have I got that right?
Everyone needs to have a story for the campfire.
Everyone needs to have a story around the campfire.
Everyone needs a story for the campfire.
Love it. And primarily your work is involving like leaders. Is that correct?
Yeah, currently. So in this current iteration, I'm working with leaders and founders who, and it's been a mix of like reasons why they come to me. Generally, they are, whether it's starting their business or working on a project and needing to step into their voice and visibility and needing to create that strong sense of I can present myself and my mission and the story of what brought me here and connect with an audience very clearly. So those are probably the reasons why folks come to me. But there's also a lot of inner work in the work that we do. So some folks will come because they are feeling like a need for healing some stories, or they've sensed that they've been avoiding tapping into certain stories for a long time and it feels really sensitive. And so I hold space for those stories to emerge and to notice the patterns and to make connections, reframes, releasing stories that don't serve, and then leaning into the stories that do empower, so that when you go to craft messages that you want to share with your audience and that can embody all the knowledge that you are trying to make your life's work and share with the world, that you feel so confident and you feel so whole, and that your nervous system is calm in that speaking and in that sharing.
Because from I imagine there'll be some people that will hear that and go, and I mean maybe it's a British thing, or maybe it's like just not a West Coast thing. I don't know, but like that kind of when people think about starting a business, doing a startup, I'd imagine a lot of people have never even thought about their story. Why is it important for leaders to know their story?
I don't know if everyone thinks about their story at the moment that their business like takes inception, that they think about starting their business. But it's interesting, in every business course, coaching course, marketing course, there's always a section that asks for people to write their story. And that's how I fell into this work, because this wasn't sort of my primary idea for a business. I was freelancing. And one of my clients that I was helping, I was actually helping teach her English and helping her as a communication coach. She was a part of a like a mastermind, a business group, and was being told that she needed to have her transformation story or her hero's story done by a certain deadline, or she would be dropped from the group. And she came to me in crisis, and I offered her some of the tools and the techniques that I usually use to help my personal statement clients who are applying to grad school or for jobs and things like that. I gave her some of those techniques, and it was so transformational for her. And she said she tried so many other resources, nothing worked, and that this really worked. So she encouraged me to kind of pursue a business. And in the last, I'm very new to online business. I've only been pursuing this for 10 months, but in the course of that, I started to find out this is actually like phase one of marketing, right? Like in your business plan, you kind of need to have your founder's story. And I don't know if it's a growing trend or if the algorithm is just feeding my awareness of it now that, I've kind of established this is my niche. But I see story-based marketing, branding pages everywhere now. And so I think it's twofold. Like I try to differentiate myself a little bit from the marketers and the branders, because that's not just what I do. And it's not the entry point to what I do, although it will sort of solve your branding and marketing needs by doing your what I call sacred story work. But it is a more holistic process. And one of the limitations that I found when I was going through the courses or the coaching programs, or when clients have come to me and they've shared with me their experiences with those same steps, is that people will sort of like give you the prompt. And if they take it a level up, they might give you a template to write your story, and that's it. No one helps you if you have blocks because you've experienced trauma. And so trying to answer a simple prompt taps into that. Or if you taps into senses of imposter syndrome, if you're a member of a historically marginalized community, if it taps into historical, just repeated memories of opportunities lost or being minimized or your voice not being heard, if it taps into origin stories where your parents haven't ever supported you and they don't support you now in your business. So all of that stuff, like everything that makes us who we are, is a part of our story. And so a simple prompt and saying, hey, you better make this like the best story you've ever told because your whole business and sales depends on it. Suddenly having such a high pressure, high risk task, it's too much to do without support, right? And so that's where this work has evolved from, that need.
How do you think it aligns with vision?
Yeah. I mean, one of the foundational parts of what we do is, aside from going through your memories so that you're really getting a clear picture of who you are, what moments have shaped you, what moments are your origin stories, whatever. But as you go through my process, you'll start to separate the things that you didn't have a choice over as a child, and then you'll start to really lean into the things that you have a choice over as you've become an adult and exercise your autonomy. And the core of that is your core values and your vision. So I really actually like the culmination of the story work brings you to a place where you are so clear on your vision and your values, and then your mission as an offshoot of that, that your messaging becomes aligned and dialed in just because you know yourself so deeply. And your confidence also emerges from that place of deep knowing.
Yeah, the reason I ask as well is I will indulge my self-interest here, and maybe we'll leave it in. Which weirdly enough is kind of related to what I'm going to talk about. This fucking never-ending infinity window of self-doubt. So the last guest I had on, or the last one that was released, he was leadership expert, and he taught his big thing was about vision. Was the vision? And I was kind of like, and we were talking about the podcast, and I was like, well, my vision is, 5 years time, 500 episodes, and he's like, that's a goal. I'm like, okay. So, and then so he's like, what does it look like? So we started going into that. And I said, well, higher quality guests. Not this isn't high quality. Higher quality guests. More reach, sponsorship, more opportunities, like more money. So I've got more chance to do more on the podcast, etc. And he said, "Why is that important? Why does that matter?"
Yes.
So I was like, it was it was very distracting for me because I was editing the podcast, and then I was going over this bit, and I was like, oh fucking hell. So then I'm on the whiteboard downstairs Sunday night, writing it all out. Like, why is it important? Really trying to tap into it and going, well, is it just a selfish thing? Is it just for me? Is it just because I'm interested in talking to people? Is it just because I'm interested in increasing my network? Is it just because I'm interested in increasing, fill in the blank, social status, money, all the rest of it? Or is there something deeper? And then I had to really go back to my former self to understand the roots. So I was like, well, 2-3 years ago, even further back, but certainly 2-3 years ago, podcasts were so important to me. Going through a dark time in my life, and not necessarily just a dark time, but just just a growth cycle. And being able to essentially have these digital older siblings or father figures that I could plug my headphones in while I'm doing all the mundane tasks around the house on my own on a dark December evening or whatever, that was really important. And I suppose it was all I want to offer that to the previous version of me. So if we talk about an avatar, we talk about, and in marketing we talk about avatars, don't we? Who is your primary audience? Well, it's probably me 2 years ago or 3 years
Yeah.
ago. So how much story is in there? Do you know what I mean? Is there some story in there, or do you think there's more
Yeah.
work to do there?
Well, first of all, you just sort of narrated a picture of how sacred story work works. And so that's one of the things that we do. If you're struggling to be really clear on your vision, I would say you're at the wrong starting point, right? And you sort of intuitively walked yourself back. I would say that before you can really message a vision or speak about a vision, you have to know what your values are. And how do you know what your values? Your values have been shaped. Your belief system has been formed throughout your entire life, and it's shaped by so many experiences and people and sources and forms of education, and then moments. Because there's moments, there's all the things that shape our values because they were sort of imprinted on us or given to us, and then there's the stories where we as people, we kind of experience our free will, and we kind of experience like, uh-oh, that doesn't sit right with me, and now I have to figure out why. Right? I've been in this culture, I've been in this family, I've been in this context, this is what I was taught, but it no longer feels like me, and now I have to figure out why. And then I have to sort of, whether we're conscious about this process or not, we adopt beliefs that form our system of beliefs and our core values that guide the rest of our behaviors and actions. And so doing your story work is telling that, slowing down and noticing, and then telling that story back to yourself. And this does a couple things. One, sorry, I know your question was sort of, is there a story there? I'm going to like sort of
No, please,
narrate the process first, and then we
please.
can come back to your story. But by slowing down and noticing, it does a couple things. One, you start to find the spaces where you can then name the subconscious, right? The things that we just sort of are operating on all the times anyway, we can narrate it. And if we can narrate to ourselves, then we can effectively communicate it to somebody else. And then the other thing is it gives us opportunity to come into alignment, because if we haven't been living a life where we're intentionally making space to notice and interrogate and narrate back to ourselves, we might be living with contradictions in our belief system and in our values, or in our values and then our actions and our, behaviors. And those contradictions form a lot of the conflict, whether that's internal or interpersonal, right? In our relationships. And so by slowing down this process, we get to start to say, you know what, that core value that I've been holding on to for so long, or that belief, or that sort of narrative or storyline that's been having so much effect on me for so long, it's no longer serving me, and it doesn't align with everything else I've crafted for my life and for this current version of myself, or for the future version of myself that's calling me forward. And so I'm going to go ahead and release that. So I sort of narrate all that to say, it seems like you found the storyline of, well, this podcast is really in service to 2 years ago, Jason, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you found the connection point to your past, and you found that catalyzing moment story, which was all the podcasts in that chapter of your life that really opened doors for you, that offered perspective shifts for you, who shaped this present version of you. And I think to continue the work then is, we've gotten in touch with past Jason, you've brought that in with present Jason, and now you can really intentionally get in touch with future Jason, right? And start to write the story from, what does it look like from this version of me to that future version of me. And that's what the vision comes in, because then you're filling it in with sensory detail. What is Jason waking up believing and feeling? And then as a result of those beliefs and feelings, what is Jason doing? How does Jason behave? What does the world that he's building around him start to look like? What do his relationships feel like? What do the outcomes of those relationships and those actions set off in the world around him? You're building a world through story that heals your past, clarifies your present, and calls in your future.
Yeah, that's cool. I have some follow-up questions, but
Go for
but
it.
can you hear that noise? Is it
Sorry, I was gonna ask you. It's the trash truck here in
the
Taiwan. Do you
trash
remember
truck?
hearing this?
I
The
don't.
trash truck.
I don't ever remember that.
It
It's
plays for release. It's passing by. It should be
it's
gone in a second.
such a weird kind of tune to have. I
The
was
trash
like,
truck.
I was trying to think. I was like, because I know your family's not in the house, and I was like, oh, it can't be one of the
Is that a kid's
children.
toy?
Yeah, it sounded like
Yeah.
a recorder. Um,
Exactly.
yeah.
That's what
No,
it
no, it's
is.
fine. Like I was like, is this getting louder, or is it just my like ADHD? I was God, I'm sure it's getting louder. I'll go focus, 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 focus.
I was gonna call it out myself, but I was like, if he doesn't hear it, let me just keep it going.
Yeah, yeah. See how good that echo cancellation is. There was so much in that last section that I wanted to ask about. So they're two very different strings, actually. So one is neurodivergence, and
Okay,
the other is manifestation. Pick one.
let's start with neurodivergence because I always think understanding the past and the present helps us clarify the future.
Mm. So we talk about neurodivergence, autism a lot. You and I, and
We
also
do
also on this podcast.
on the pod.
Yeah. I don't know whether my neurodivergent or sprinkle of autism tendencies, I don't know
Mm,
if they are becoming more apparent because I'm like
mm-hmm.
leaning into this label, or that through this journey of like learning who Jason is, I've been just allowing myself to be more me, and therefore by being more me, authentically me, I'm masking less. Um, yeah, it probably seems like it doesn't really relate to what we were just talking about, but there was a section
No,
in
not at
there
all.
where I was like,
I find, yeah.
mm.
Oh, sorry.
And then we don't have to
Second.
obviously just talk about me on this situation. We can talk about it in general, about because you've obviously had your own journey with this, and I think for me, like I just people keep telling me that I'm autistic, so it's kind of like and then but obviously not being diagnosed. I like I don't know, and then I wonder like it's like a weird neurodivergent trait where we like pick up these things and roll with it, and then I'm like, hang on, am I masking? Am I masking my neurotypicalness with neurodivergence? Like, do you know what I mean?
So many questions, yeah.
Mm,
Mm. So one, you asked, is, do I feel like I'm becoming more autistic because it's more apparent to me now that I know what I'm looking for? That was sort of the first question, right?
mhm,
And then the second question is, or am I masking less now that I'm on this journey to acceptance by learning more about the diagnosis and meeting more people who've shared their stories with me, and I'm coming into
mm.
more of a place of acceptance so I can mask less. Is that what you were sort
Yeah.
of asking? Is it one or the other? Are they mutually exclusive to you? Does it have to be one or the other?
Don't know. I think I like to plot things in like on spreadsheets, so I probably think that they should be, because otherwise I've got to like split a
Mm.
cell and um
Error.
yeah. So yeah, I don't know. I think yeah, sorry, I'm trying to just tap back into why that question came up for me. And it's like um we talk about childhood, or like one of the things that was I always remember was like, you think too much. So you carry that, don't you? And then now I'm like in this thing of like, well, fuck you. I'm thinking. Like, I
Yeah.
actually want to make a living out of thinking. I like this. I feel like it's
Yes.
my greatest
Yes.
strength. But being told, and this is no, to parents or whatever, I had a great upbringing. But like that, that was being said to me in like it's meant to be like oh, don't overthink, don't worry, it's
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
But then obviously there's another side to that, which is stop thinking. And yeah, so the neurodivergence thing is kind of like interweaved into that.
Yes. It's very much a trait of what makes us who we are and what makes us special.
mm,
And I wanted to say, do you mind if I offer this, or did
not
you? I don't want you
not
to
at
lose your
all,
thought either.
not at all.
You transported me in time with that phrase, you think too much, but probably not to where you might think I would go. And I want to send a gift to you if I can find it, because you brought me back to a memory of me being 17 years old in Taipei. I'd moved away from the US. I'd come with my sisters back home to Taiwan. And I was like, I'd just gotten out of class at the university, and I'd gone across the street to the bookstore, and on a table of books, like, it's so visceral. I'm there in my memory. I picked up a book, and it was a little square, like, coffee table book, and the title was 想太多, which is think too much. And I can see the images in it. It's like illustrated, and it's little cartoon characters, and it was a celebration of people who think too much, just like me and you. And I purchased that book. I couldn't even read all the Chinese characters in it, but like the way it made me feel like I belonged in this universe is a feeling that's running through my body right now, and that you brought me back to just by saying that. So if I can find the book again, I'm going to send it to you, because it is, to me, it's a celebration of what makes us special. And your spreadsheets and your constant questionings and these deep dives into self-exploration and understanding, it is a superpower as long as you know how to use it responsibly.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
100%. Yeah. And I'm gonna take I'll I'll tell you like a very tactful way that I actually do that. And it's a bit like meditation, and I've spoken about this in the podcast before, but I will just know, it's almost like if I'm overthinking, then some focused work, some focused breath, vinyasa or whatever, focused attention meditation obviously is good for that. But also in a way, but they really help kind of push pull of like bringing your focus onto an object and then releasing really helps with creative thinking anyways. So I developed this into, and I think it's probably a thing, but I just happened upon it. And then, so if I'm looking for ideas, or even if I'm thinking too much, like if I go out for a walk, maybe I've told you this, I don't know. But if I go out for a walk, and let's say I am noticing that I'm thinking too much, I would just go, all right, let's be present with let's be present with the activity until like that tree or until that thing or whatever. And it's just like little like easy digestible mindfulness slots. And then when I get to the end of there, like you can go off and think again. But I do it in both ways. So like if actually I need to think and I need some ideas, a good way for me to start with is actually being present. And then it's as if once you like release that tension, say tension, yeah, because it is kind of like a bit of a workout for your brain.
Focus.
Yeah, once you release that, there's something that happens where you do get some stuff there. But yeah, so yeah, using it responsibly, I think probably before I found meditation, yeah, I probably did think too much, you know? But meditation is the most amazing tool for training your mind and learning how to use it effectively. Okay, so that's neurodivergence. Tick. Do you do any manifestation, or because you mentioned we were talking about vision?
Yeah. Yeah.
How do you
You
think
know, I
about
think, go ahead.
how do you think about manifestation, or any techniques that you would recommend?
I don't know if I practice manifestation in the way that seems to be trending. Maybe it's because I don't understand some of those methods as deeply. But I will say, like, I'll notice often that I'm manifesting my vision, and very much for me, it's a branch of like what I call story work and connecting with my future self and calling in that future self. And for me, it almost feels less woo woo because I am making the connections between how having such a clear picture of that future self and the chapter that the world that she lives in guides every single behavior, action, thought of my present. So things happen very seamlessly for me. For example, I'm living in Taiwan now. That was something I desired shortly before it happened, and then it was set into motion, right? And the move required so much. My husband and I both walked away from six-figure stable jobs and sold a home and uprooted our entire life. But the way it happened for us felt easy. There was no blockages because of that alignment and that clarity on why we were going, how we were getting there, and when it would happen. And then to take it, give you another example that's more present. I'm currently living in a new house. This is how crazy it gets. So I was staying in an old house that was right across the street from my family. It was a house that no one should be living in for long term. It had been previously uninhabited for a decade. But we were originally only coming to Taiwan for a year and then deciding what was going to happen next. So we thought we can stay there for a year. I mean, it was run down. We started having a mold problem, which I've shared with you. And because I was subconsciously attached to not only the proximity to my family, but some other things that we can explore later. Some things that were not of service to me internally. We stayed in that house for almost a year and a half, my whole family getting sick. My husband had been asking, like, we need to look for other places. We need to look for other places. And I kept on finding the reasons why that would be impossible. Like, it's too much to disrupt the kids in the middle of the school year. What if we can't find somewhere that's within their school districts? Or I really want to stay walking distance or close enough to my grandparents. They're in their 90s. What if something happens? I want to be able to get back really quickly. I had all these excuses. Why not? And so it didn't happen. It didn't happen. It didn't happen. The moment that I surrendered and realized that my future and the safety of my family belonged in a new home, we found the apartment that I'm currently in. First of all, I found the app that led us to the apartment on a Sunday, found the listing on a Wednesday, saw the apartment on a Saturday, put the deposit, and there was competition. There were other families that were looking at the apartment at the same time. Followed my intuition to speak first to the owner. Gave him the deposit on a Saturday. Didn't even have the money. Like, it takes a day or so because we transfer our money from the US to be able to pull it from the ATM, and somehow finagled it so that we could get the cash because everything's done cash. Had the money by Saturday night, and moved in Sunday. And the place is perfect. Walking distance from my grandparents, 2 bedrooms, like everything we could have asked for in a home, gym downstairs, kids club, like all the things we were looking for when we started talking about possibly moving. Even when I was saying, no, it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. It is the manifestation of all the things that we wanted the moment that I surrendered, and connected to, can't be who I'm supposed to be if I don't align with my context. And then the universe was there to deliver.
Yeah, that's cool. I'm so happy that so happy for you, like that you solved that. Because yeah, that must have been difficult, and obviously we've spoken about it over Instagram, didn't we? And yeah, that's awesome. I think yeah, the reason I asked on the manifestation thing actually is because like I'd looked into this stuff in the past, and then I kind of went on this like, nah, it's not the universe, it's all me and my ego and my heavy lifting and all that kind of thing that is going to get me to where I want to be. And then just recently, I think it was following, in retrospect, I think it was following a mystical experience I had through psilocybin mushrooms. This is not a recommendation for anyone to do that. So so I've just been feeling about a little bit more spiritual, a bit more connected to something other than this, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And then I don't know. So I kind of landed on this manifestation stuff. And also, by the way, I don't know how much I kind of believe about like the universe, like wishing the universe. Like I don't want to. I'm not really like fond of the whole wishing thing, but I do find that it's a really simple, powerful, effective meditation technique to basically just sit with the eyes closed and envision like that future self. How does he feel? How does he respond to this situation? Really tapping into that. And that's been like, I feel like really transformative for me. Like, I don't know, like, and I suppose maybe it kind of lends itself to like attachment styles. Like, how would a secure person respond to this stimuli? And it's like,
Yeah.
how would 5-year Jason respond to this thing? Because 5-year Jason is secure, right? 5-year Jason isn't needy or lacking confidence or all the rest of it. And there's I had a guest on the podcast quite some time ago. Why did podcasts do this to me? Persia Lawson. Persia Lawson, and she talked about this thing, and one of her books was Love is Coming. And it's kind of tapping into, so it's like, how would you show up if you knew that love was coming?
Yeah.
When she wrote it, she was single. She finished the book, she met her husband.
Yes.
So like that's a form of manifestation, isn't it?
Yeah.
And that probably planted the seed for me. But I was still kind of like, I still kind of don't really know how to. But these things take time, right? You need a little drip feed of inspiration, and then it might take another 6 months, and then you'll find another thing to like kind of like, all right, that manifestation thing. But yeah. So I guess all of that to say is looking at story work, vision.
Yeah.
These things all go together, and looping right back around to what you were saying. I think maybe the only downside with my approach is I'm kind of reverse engineering Is it top down? Top down rather than like story work bottom up?
Tell me more. There's something I wanted to add on to what you were saying about manifestation, but let's finish this thought through first, and then we can come back around.
As in, so to find my why, my purpose, my the reason, my story, I had to start at like the goal and then work my way down the ladder to like, all right, this is why. You know what I mean?
That's not backwards or uncommon. I think that I just want to acknowledge there's a lot of entry points into understanding ourselves. So for me, what you're calling a goal is also a desire, right? Like you have desire, you want to have 500 episodes of the podcast. You want, I'm sure when you say high value guests, you have names and people in mind, right? Mm-hmm. So you have desire there, and that's an entry point. That's a very tangible entry point because we experience desire so viscerally, right? Or so readily. And then you're doing the story work by following the thread of desire to where is this connected to, and where can I go deeper? Where is its origin? Mm-hmm. And then once we kind of go as far as we can, and this is where some scaffolds and support might help, especially if following those threads tap into sensitive areas. But then when we do it in a good way that feels empowering, then we can start to kind of follow the journey the other way and connect the dots the other way. So yeah, you're doing it beautifully.
Thank you. All right, full transparency. I have this like real running guilt when I tap into this like self-centered stuff where I'm like asking for some help. I think someone said to me actually, I actually spoke to you a little bit offline about it. And someone said to me, was it like you can't just have it as a therapy, a published therapy session for yourself. And I'm kind of like, so while I'm doing all this, I'm kind of like, there's this like part of me that's going, you're so selfish. All you think about is yourself. No one's interested. All you're doing is subtracting. All you're doing is taking from Joey. You're not giving anything. So this is what's running. And then on the other side of it, so because along with this, this vision work I've been doing, or this why work, I did reach out to some people and ask them like, do you think I actually have anything to offer? Like, as in, and I'm doing it now because now I'm like, oh, you're looking for validation, you're looking for compliments, but genuinely, I would be asking, is there something that you believe that I can offer? Like, so let's say tomorrow, 5 years goes by, I've got 500 episodes, and I'm as well known as whatever the podcasters are. So I've got access to all these guests. Are they better going to another podcaster, or do I have something different? Does that make sense? So am I just a blend of like Chris Williamson, Russell Brand, and Andrew Huberman? I don't know. Like, do you know what I mean? Are they better just going to the source, or do I have something different? So this is what I've been really sitting with. Sorry, I've added a few things in there, and also then I'm like, this is my like unique thing. Like I open up about stuff and I share my struggles or whatever. So on one side of that, people have said that that's valuable. But then the other side, there's like, no one cares. And that's why you'd have more people listening if you weren't just, I don't know. And honestly, I'm really cognizant that I don't want to seem like I'm asking for validation. I just wondered, like, what do you think?
The first thing I think, it's not going to answer that last question. The first thing I think is, do you know where all of those voices belong to? You asked quite a few questions, right? Should I be taking from my guests? Should I be sharing so much? Should I be making this so much about me? Can I do this? And then it sort of traces into questions of, what do I have to offer? And are they better going to the source? All of those questions, are those your voice, or do they represent other people's voices?
Probably other people's voices, I think.
It might be a really freeing exercise, and this is something that I do in story work, is to trace each of those questions to the first time you heard it and send it back home to the person who gave it to you. Say, thank you for that offer. I don't need you anymore. If it doesn't serve me in this moment right now, I found who the owner is, and send it off. It will quiet your internal dialogues down a lot and give you enough airtime inside there to hear where your voice is. It's a little bit of a different technique than just meditation. And then when you can hear your voice, and it takes time and it takes practice, but you will recognize your voice. Your voice sounds different from anybody else's voice. Then you have to make a better relationship with that voice. You have to choose to trust it. And this might involve some rewiring of the nervous system and doing some somatic practices so that we can really strengthen that relationship with that voice. But then, what do you think happens when you start to feel that need for validation? If you can hear your own voice and you can trust it, what do you think happens?
If I can hear my own voice, what happens to that need for validation? You can self-validate. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
You ask yourself. You ask yourself, because you're going to trust yourself. You're going to trust that all your lived experiences, all the lessons you've learned, all the great teachers who have imparted on you, and that growth mindset that you have that loves to think, that's so curious, that loves to explore, that loves to help others, that created a whole podcast to be vulnerable and make sense of yourself in conversation and dialogue with other people, that, you know, you're offering that to your audience so that they can hopefully see parts of themselves in it. You start to trust all the things that you know about yourself, and your voice cuts through all the noise to remind you. You also start to trust that your voice is going to call you in or call you out when you need to shift and align and say sorry and say thank you and come back to yourself or realign or check yourself. Like, you make space to just be the human being that is Jason in this moment. It becomes so much more simple.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I think yeah, because on the one hand, you have like yeah, people who go, it's your podcast. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's your podcast. People tune in to you. Therefore, you're a unique thing is sharing stuff about yourself. And then you have the other hand where it's like, but it's about the guest. I mean, like, yeah.
So as you're wondering this right now, what is the problem that you're trying to solve?
If it's a wholly if it is it a wholly selfish process when I ask questions that relate to my own individual experience on this podcast? That's the problem I'm trying to solve.
I'm gonna offer you something that was really profound when it was offered to me years back. I can share that story in a moment, but I'm gonna offer a question. What if the answer is that it is very selfish? What does that mean?
So yeah, I've got two paths. One's like, well, fuck them, I'm doing what I want. And then the other side is stop sharing stuff about yourself, Jason. Just ask questions. Only focus on the guests. Don't offer anything of yourself. And then that's also, and it's safer over there because it's less vulnerable. So we'll just do that.
So for me, I was wrestling with hyper analyzing all of my words and actions with others because I was so afraid, am I being manipulative? Because I had grown up in a house with where that was something I experienced quite a bit. So I was so afraid to become the people in my family of origin or the people who had done harm to me through what I experienced as manipulation, that as a young adult, I was hyper critical and hyper fearful of myself for being manipulative, right? For becoming manipulative or having others actually not even being manipulative, because I never really had the intention. It was for others to experience me as manipulative. And when a peer asked that question to me, so what if the answer is yes? What if the answer is yes? It stopped me in my tracks because it realized, like, if the answer is yes, then can I trust myself to unlearn that habit? Can I trust myself to, if I am so fearful of it, what's the why behind it? Well, I don't want to cause harm. Can I trust that as my compass? That intention of, I'm not here to cause harm. And if I do unintentionally cause harm, can I trust my follow-up actions to then repair, right? So I want to offer you in the same way. Maybe it's not so extreme, end all be all, one or the other. Either it's fuck it, I'm selfish, I'm doing this, or no, I found out I'm selfish, so I can't do it at all. Can we call in a place of, if any of this is selfish, I'm only asking this question because I don't want to be a selfish person. I actually care so much about my guest's experience and my audience's experience, and that this is just my way of exploring. And if someone experienced it as selfish, can I trust myself to sit with that, filter it, process it, and then refine my actions and behaviors to be a little less selfish next time, while staying true to myself and bringing more reciprocity to my guests and my audience? Can I do that? I bet you can.
Yeah. Yeah, that yeah. Like so many things like flying off, like little trains of thought, and I'm like, oh God. Yeah. Yeah, I'm gonna need to reflect on that. Yeah. Yeah, thank you so much. I want to shift gears now.
Let's do it.
Okay.
You good?
Yeah. Yeah, it's been a weird few months. I might not include this bit. Yeah, it's just
That's
been
okay.
a weird few months. Lots of like kind of self-reflection and this like selfishness thing coming in over and over again. And it's kind of like, I don't know. And now I feel like in a way it's kind of like it's 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 actually harming my joy that I get from the podcast, because I can't just be like, hey, I'm just being vulnerable, I'm just like talking about my shit, and then all of a sudden I've got this like voice in my head now going, what you're doing is wholly and only for you. But then that also like gives it more energy the more that I think on it. Yeah, it's I think as well, like I had the not only is the work of the podcast, keeping up with it, being quite a lot of late, but also
Yeah.
my listenership has just like gone through the floor. It's really dropped
Yeah.
off. So you try not to look at this. I've always tried to not to look at the analytics too much. But then
Right.
when it's like week after week and you kind of like, it then becomes like a value judgment on yourself, and you start to go, why? And then all them doubts
Yeah.
that you had that were lingering, where you're able to go, nah, fuck you, like it's fine because the podcast is growing. Then the podcast stops growing, and then you go, well, it's because of that. Um, so, and I suppose what like it's like the questions
Yeah.
that I'm asking now, the questions that I was just asking you a moment ago, are they to help the
Yeah.
2 years ago Jason? Are they to help that avatar? Or are they just to help me? And is there a difference between that? Um,
Yeah. And could we expand that question? And sorry, I want to respect that you asked to switch gears. So I know
no, we're
you feel
good.
more
No,
comfortable
I
putting
think
this out.
it's just like a no, yeah, it's just a fear response, because I'm like, fuck, I've talked about this too long. I've talked about this too long. Um, so that's why I was like, oh shit, I've got like loads of stuff that we need to talk about. Um,
We can definitely shift gears. I just wanted to offer that if you are asking if it helps you, or 2 years ago, Jason, I think just expand that question to, if it helps me, is it going to help anyone else? Because, as humans, we're not all that different. And most of the things that help us, anything that helps us, I believe, is going to help someone out there. And I can understand how, the metrics and the numbers and things can feel like, well, what am I doing this all for? And I just want to encourage you. I think that when you do a little bit more of this work that you've already started and you've been called into, when you find those values and that mission behind all of this, and then you also untangle those voices, it will allow you the space to get curious about the metrics, like you're doing R&D, you're doing, data analytics, but without it having to interfere too much with your sense of self, and especially not your sense of worth or your sense of trust in the mission that you're carrying out by doing this, because it's not a small thing. It is a lot of work, and most people wouldn't do it. And there's something really, I believe, divinely appointed and noble for anybody doing a creative endeavor. So I just send you so much love and hope that you can continue to tap into that, whatever brought you to start this, so that you can feel sustained and keeping it going.
Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate that so much. Okay. What does community mean to you?
Yeah, I know we had talked a little bit, especially around, if it's okay with you, I'll just go jump straight to the question, like the difference between community and society, right? So community to me means that you are participating in an interconnected system where you experience not only belonging and a sense of shared identity, shared space, but also shared responsibility. Like maybe that's the main difference between community and society. Society are sort of systems that are placed on us, and we operate within them, or they operate over us, whether we choose to or not. Community is about reciprocity, and it's about aligned action towards common good. And I think that's the big thing that people are missing.
Shared responsibility. Can a community still be online?
Yeah, absolutely. Right? Can you online have relationships that are reciprocal, that shape your identity, even online is a space, right? A space is a gathering place where we make meaning, right? We make meaning through conversation. We make meaning through memories, through events, through rituals, through celebrations. But beyond socializing is the activity of a society, right? The going abouts, the coming and going. And yeah, there's talking and communicating in that too. But community building involves how can I protect this space and the inhabitants of this space? How can I sustain this? How can I nurture this and nourish this? So let's go back to the basics. If we think of living systems, right? If we go into nature and you have a community of prairie dogs, or, a community of humans, a community of fungus, right? Fungi living on the forest floor, there's this idea of symbiosis. The community thrives because everybody is playing a role towards the well-being of all of the other interconnected members, right? And that's very different from the Western, here we go, the Western colonized systems of hierarchy that make up a lot of the societies that get the most sort of airspace nowadays, right? Or that we learn about in our textbooks. And that's why I think that while societies can be some form of community sometimes, most of them have gotten too large and too top down, and lost the core principles to make symbiosis a possibility. I mean, that's why we're facing climate crisis and wealth disparity and hunger, and all of the crises that we face on Earth is because the societies that were formed by Western imperialism are not communities and are not concerned with collective well-being.
Do you have any tips on how to find a community?
So I know that this is a big question. I want to peel that question back, and just honor that the fact that we asked this question about finding community really speaks to how disconnected we are from how we're meant to exist as living creatures, right? Like, for sure, the prairie dogs and the fungi aren't asking, how do I find my community? They are just existing in one. So I say that to say, start as close to home as you can. And I know that can be sensitive. I know that for a lot of people, they're not experiencing belonging in their families of origin, in their neighborhoods of origin. Schools are no longer places of community unless you get a teacher who's actively trying to build community within their classrooms or their campuses. But I still encourage people who feel like they have no sense of community or don't know where to start, see if you can start as close to your sense of self or spaces that you already exist in, even if that means that you have to serve first to form community. And I'll give a real life example. For me, this was as a young teacher. I was going through a period of time where I had no connection to my family of origin. And I had actually because of going through trauma. And I think actually this was one of the questions that you and I kind of touched on. It's a common experience when folks go through trauma that they lose a lot of relationships, because many relationships that existed prior to the trauma suddenly don't feel supportive to them anymore. Those individuals aren't equipped to help them navigate that trauma. And the person who's gone through trauma is not in a state where they can socialize and keep up with the activities of life as it used to be. And so a lot of people who survive trauma find themselves very alone and lacking community. So in my early 20s, I had been through sexual assault that had severed a lot of the relationships in the communities I participated in the past. And those communities probably weren't as reciprocal as I thought they were. And the trauma, helped me realize that. But for me, thankfully, I was able to access therapy. So I was able to start my healing journey. And then in that also, I've always had a strong sense of my mission and my vision. And so that really carried me through that time. I knew I was going to be an educator. I knew I wanted to be a social justice teacher. And I came into the classroom with a mission to create the spaces of belonging and the communities that I needed, both when I was growing up and in that moment. And so, I made community where I was at. It wasn't easy, but I truly formed a sense of identity, a sense of self and belonging by helping create the conditions and the space for others to do the same. So that's my story. And I know that, oftentimes this work isn't something you do single-handed. Like if you can just nurture one relationship where you can share a vision or a goal and then start to grow from there, right? Branch off from there, just like mushrooms do, just like prairie dogs do. It can start with one or two and then multiply by nurturing those relationships, carving out space, finding a common mission. So for me in the classroom, it was making sure that marginalized people, disenfranchised students and their families had a space of belonging, and the activities. So for us, it was the Black Student Union and the spoken word team had activities to make our time feel meaningful, right? And form deep relationships that have lasted now for a decade. So yeah, it might start with service. If you're feeling like you don't know where to go, you might have to do a little bit of responsibility taking first, and then it will become very reciprocal. Like I'm not talking about being a savior or a martyr and like taking all this responsibility. I will tell you, in my experience, I have always felt like, maybe this is a little bit what you feel like, I felt like I received so much love, so much wisdom, so much time shared with me, so much, like I feel like I've received tenfold of what I've put out there in ways that have challenged, like, am I worthy? Do I deserve this? And I've just learned to accept it and learned that that's the beauty of symbiosis and reciprocal communities.
Yeah, reciprocal is like, seems like a real key point of it, doesn't it? And it's like on a real like selfish ground as well. Like we want our community members to offer something to us, don't we? So that's why it kind of works, whereby, I mean, obviously if they're in the place to do so, it's also about looking nurturing as well. But community is kind of built off of like people being useful for each other and helping each other out. And
yeah.
like as you're talking then, I'm like, I'm flipping back and forth between like thinking about your community and your journey, and then it's just like podcast, and then I'm like, service, and I'm like, okay, is this a service? And yeah, I think it is. I think it is.
I wanted to ask, I think it is too. I wanted to ask, how much interaction do you have with your audience? Or maybe, yeah, let's ask it.
Yeah, not too much. Those that it seems like those that listen are quite shy. maybe, because I'll always I'll always say drop me a DM. It doesn't really happen that often, even on episodes which get like quite a few listens. I think maybe people think people just think maybe you won't reply or whatever. But if you are listening, this is your invitation to drop me a message, because I don't maybe I won't reply forever, but at the moment I always reply. I sometimes I feel like I get the extreme ends. So I feel like I get like some interaction and a bit back and forth with people who I know as well, who listen, who I've maybe known first. And then the other end is like people that get like one or two. This doesn't happen all the time, but gets a little bit kind of scary, a bit much. So I seem to attract
I know what you mean.
like the odd woman from across the globe that sends me a lot of messages. And it's interesting because like my constant need for love and validation at first, I'm like, oh, thank you. And then I start to engage, and then it can quickly get a bit like, oh, fucking hell. 20 unread messages or whatever. And I'm like, and that's quite terrifying. It's just a funny old world, the whole podcasting thing. It's almost like, yeah, I don't know. But
sorry to put you on the spot. I wanted to ask. Sorry to put you. I wanted to ask. I know I'm starting a podcast. I'm nowhere near as diligent as you, and I can imagine that I have similar experience. I mean, not the people in my DMs from the podcast, but just it can feel like you're not as connected to the audience with the podcast. And so I was just trying to contextualize the question that you asked me about, like, can an online community be a community? I think that if I was only thinking about my podcast audience, or Instagram's a little bit easier because we can more easily start DM conversations. But I think like it's not out of the 1,000 people that follow me, I'm not having 1,000 conversations with folks. However, you and I have never met in real life, right? But how many conversations have we had now? And you text me friend, I text you friend. And I'm thinking of like just in these 11 months that I've been doing online business, the people I've connected to one another. I literally feel like I have best friends now that I've met on the internet, whether it's from hosting workshops and having people come to multiple workshops, or meeting in the DMs, or then inviting on. I think the podcast is great just to have these conversations and form these relationships. And I feel like my relationship with you is very reciprocal. I think that people sometimes feel like they're not a part of communities because they're overlooking the communities that are right here under their noses. Like, we have formed an online community. I maybe haven't brought you into the fold as much. And well, I thought of one person, and I did reach out to that person to say, hey, would you like to be on Jason's podcast? And didn't get a response. But it's sometimes relationships can take a little bit longer to form that trust. So I say all that to say, maybe the part of this question about where do I start and where do I have a community, are you parts of communities right now that you're not aware of, even if it's one relationship or two? And can we look for more connection points? Can we bring in more people around a shared mission? Can we find where our different missions align and we can mutually energize them, right? I'm sure you're doing that all the time. When you mentioned the woman who wrote her book and then she manifested her husband quickly afterwards, I have a similar story. That's how I manifested my husband, not looking for a husband, but 2 weeks prior to meeting who would become my husband, I had an experience where I had this awareness that I was comfortable in my ego because I was this bomb teacher that was like moving and shaking and starting programs and got so much love from my students and my community. I felt like I knew everything there was to know about love. I'd gone through this period where I was mastering self-love. And I felt like I knew everything. And then, whether I don't remember, I was in Taiwan, I know that, and I got a meditation, I was doing a meditation, but I just got a download that you don't know even the surface about love. And then, okay, so how do I learn about love? You open up to learn the lessons on love that can only happen in whatever context you have to be open to. And I knew then that it was going to be involve a family. It didn't really link to romance, but I was sitting there in my home in Taiwan with my grandparents in this messy, dysfunctional family, which was my origin story of unconditional love. Nothing perfect, nothing glamorous. And I saw, the whole family, the whole big Hakka family in front of me. And I was like, yeah, I need to figure out whatever the glue is that makes this an experience of love. I need to figure that out for myself. I said yes. I surrendered. I knew I was giving up my comfort. I knew I was giving up my sense of accomplishment, because up until that point, I'd done so much and I could love myself. I knew I was getting myself into a situation where my love of myself and basically my ego was going to be challenged. And I said yes. And I was like, I'm going to meet whoever I'm going to have babies with. And I met him 2 weeks later, and we're still together.
How did you actually meet?
The moral of it. Oh, on Tinder.
Fuck yeah.
On Tinder, I didn't swipe for him. I would have never swiped for him because he had a headshot. He's an actor, and that was one of my hard rules. I will never date an actor, having grown up adjacent to LA. I'll never meet an actor. I'm laying in bed with my girlfriend next to me. She's swiping on my Tinder for me, and she swiped right, and he had already chosen me, so it like pops right up, And I thought nothing of it. I was like, I'm not going to do anything. Went to delete the app after speaking about stalkers. I won't get into the whole story, but was getting scuba certified and happened to have somebody who had swiped for me on Tinder years before, who remembered me, felt really creepy and stalkerish. So I was like, I gotta go like delete the entire account, not just delete the app off my phone, but like I need to go like disable my account. Logged in to do that, and Michael, who's now my husband, had wrote a paragraph where he had responded to, I had like maybe 3 lines in my bio, and it was like quantum entanglement, sustainability, gardening, and then just like figuring out what it means to be a human, something nerdy, deep, and autistic like that. He had like paragraph responses to each of those threads of thought, and I was like, who's this guy?
Yeah.
So the rest is history. The moral of the story around manifestation, though, it's not like some woo-woo chant, and maybe vision boards help. I've practiced all those things. But what I've learned about manifestation is it happens when you're ready to let go of whatever is occupying that space in your being and in your world that is meant to be filled with whatever your future self and the universe wants you to hold. So as long as you are attached.
So it's fills the space of the self-limiting beliefs. Is that what you're saying?
No. So like it's letting go of whatever. It might be self-limiting beliefs. It might be your comfort zone. It might be your ego. It might be your past successes or your current successes. Manifestation happens when we let go of that one particular thing that is occupying the space in our being and in our life, that the next thing is waiting for us to let go of so it can happen, so it can appear.
Yeah.
Like this apartment, I was holding on to the old house that I was living in. This old moldy house was attached to it was attached to my guilt for having grown up in America and having grown up with more than the rest of my Hakka family, who work harder. I will never, 2 weeks ago, Joey, would have never had as much self-worth as I feel like I could have if I had grown up and had to work as hard as my aunties and uncles and my cousins here. They have a harder life. They are more noble than me. They are more dignified than me. My cushy American kid life can't ever compare to what my family here has had to go through and how all of that grit has shaped their character. So I held on to living in a moldy home and dragged my family through that for a year and a half, because it wasn't just about being across the street from my auntie. That's where I thought that the version of myself, that child version that was taken from Taiwan at 3 years old and never given a chance to grow up alongside her family and become whatever Joey, or actually it wouldn't have even been Joey, it would have been Atzen, would have been had my family stayed there. I was role playing, I was cosplaying in that house as that version of my young self, because I didn't accept the universe's storyline for me. But the moment that I did, and the moment that I let go of my sense of worth being attached to how much difficulty can you withstand, and how hard can you live your everyday life, and can you just love your family and care for your family and be here even if you live in a house that's not making your entire family sick. As soon as I let go of that in my being, that's why I said, like, 3 days later, I'm in the perfect home for us. And guess who was happy for me? Guess who was happy for me?
Your aunties and family.
Every single one of them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's almost like
I didn't have to prove anything to them.
Yeah. You were trying to like force a rite of passage that you didn't need to go through to that's so interesting. And beautiful that
let go.
That you resolved it. Yeah.
Yeah. Let go of whatever is holding you so that you can step into your future.
Got some fun stuff.
Okay.
Fun for me. So I've got 4 cards in front of me. Let's see what we can get through. They have questions on them.
Okay. Oh, fun.
Pick a number between 1 and 4.
3.
Nice. Is there a time in your childhood when you could look back and think, this is the reason why I'm sitting here and why? I feel like we know this, but...
Is there a time in my childhood that I'm sitting here on this podcast?
I think it's more... well, it could be, but maybe more in like, not necessarily physically, but like spiritually.
So as a child, I had that realization, or as an adult looking back, whatever happened in my childhood is the reason I'm sitting here, in the spiritual sense of
the
wherever I am today.
I think.
Sorry, my autistic.
No, you're right. It's not actually the greatest question. Actually, when you start to pick it apart.
No. Don't do that to yourself. No disclaimers on the question.
It's actually not one of mine. It's from these conversation cards that I got. So.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. My answer is, like, how can I pick one moment? Especially as someone who's done all the work, or not all the work. There's still so much work to do, but there's so many moments, and I'm in touch with so many of the moments, and all of those moments shape me, and all of the lessons and all of the joys and all the sorrows and everything. So I can probably find smaller moments that people would overlook and never talk about, more than just saying, oh, when my parents moved me from Taiwan, or, when this thing happened to me. Like, my mind goes to 4-year-old Joey, who would spend hours in the grass waiting for caterpillars and frogs and mice and all the animals to come crawl into my hand or to land on me, or the snakes. Like, literally, I had all the animals. I was like, I tap into that moment a lot. That she's here. She's a huge reason why I care about the things I care about, and I serve people and the earth the way I do.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Yeah, it's a shame. Like, I don't really like. I remember when I was a kid, you'd always remember, like, there was like worms and stuff, and there's always like animals around, and I don't know whether it's just getting older, or environmental changes, perhaps a combination. but I don't feel like I see that stuff anymore.
Yeah.
You know?
But one of the things that is healing to me is watching my children, and I see my past self in them. Every day when I go pick up my son from school here in Taiwan, and my daughter gets out the car to come with me, we have to go to the rocks under the trees, and he has to turn them over until he finds a palm-sized larva of some cicada or giant beetle, like stag beetle or something. And then my children, I just have to make that extra time in my day every single day at school pickup. Everybody, all the other families are just like, why are they still here? Because he's feeding the turtles or catching the praying mantises or holding these larvae and putting in his sister's hands. And it's so healing to me and gives me so much hope in the face of climate crisis that if like there's still time and there's still power in our earth and in all the creatures to restore us to a place of balance.
I think children have a beautiful way of doing that to you, don't they?
They do.
I mean, I wasn't able to see it like in my own self, if that makes sense, but I used to have a stepdaughter, and it was almost as if like I helped her cultivate her interest or passion in nature, like by channeling my own kind of inner child. You know, it's like it brings out the curiosity.
Yes.
Just like being a podcaster brings out my natural curiosity, like being a parent.
Yes.
Being a parent kind of prompts you to be like, look at this snail, isn't it beautiful? Like,
Exactly.
You know what I mean? Yeah, like
Yes.
forces you to be, yeah. So, yeah, I missed that a little bit, but yeah. A few more questions. I'm gonna pick one.
Okay.
Right, I've narrowed these down to 2. I'll give you some choice. 1 to 2.
1.
What did you learn from your greatest failure?
I don't know if I've evaluated which one's the greatest. So I'll go with a recent one. I lost my highest paying client this year. This is actually nothing I've spoken about publicly
Sorry to hear that.
my audience. No, it's okay. And I think if I were to imagine where I'd be now and what business I would have created and who I'd be serving, had that not happened, I'm so grateful it happened. And the lesson in that, it's layered. One, there were things that I could have done better. So I learned those things, and those things are like the level of refinement, right? And you embrace that with a growth mindset, and you go, I'm new to this, and if I can remove it from my self-worth and find the things that I was good at and that I had the integrity in, and those were good, and here are the things that you were just a novice and maybe let fall through the crack and needed to go through this experience to learn those refinement of mastery, skills, steps, procedures, whatever type of things, accept those lessons. But I think maybe the deeper, more spiritual lesson is anything that's not meant for you, anything that's not aligned to your vision, your future, the mission that you were put on this planet to serve, as long as you're faithful to show up to your values and your vision, the universe will be faithful to let everything else fall away. And so just hold things lightly. Don't get attached, because whether the universe brings you something or takes it away, it's all in the flow, right? It's all in service to your service, to the greater whole, the universe, to everything. And so it took me, I think why the lesson felt so great for me, I was mostly stunned by how long it took me to get over losing the client. Literally, it felt like I was going through a breakup. and I haven't gone through a breakup since over a decade ago.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it was because it really revealed how much of my new identity that I was forming as a business owner or whatever, I had attached to this one person. And that's never healthy, right? Like all of my validation, the validation of my mission, the validation of my idea, I had allowed to become intertwined with one person. And so it took me months to release it and then rebuild and regrow from that.
So, forgive me for, you may have actually already answered this. I don't know. Maybe I missed it. No, you did answer it. Sorry. I'm good. So you answered it in a, yeah, like in a more, I was going to ask you, I don't know if I'll keep this
Go
in.
for it.
My brain is today, I don't know, man. Like my brain is just like not firing.
It's okay.
I was going to ask you, like, tactfully, like, actually, like,
yeah,
what did you learn to, what are you going to change about your approach with your next version of this biggest client? What are you going to do differently?
Well, so I want to clarify. This client is also, oh yeah. So anyways, this client is also the catalyst client who asked me to build the business. So I didn't sign her as like a story coaching client, right? Yeah. So like just tactfully, I would learn to put clients on a contract, which I've now done. I've moved forward into doing that. She was paying me hourly. Okay. And there was, she never told me exactly why she ghosted me or why she fell off, but
so that was the way she split up with you, was ghosted as well. It wasn't like, oh, I've just...
At first, okay. I won't go into all the details.
Sorry, yeah.
Months later, she came back.
Yeah.
No, but like how I was billing on an Excel sheet for different services at different rates. So that's something that I don't do in my business anymore, because then my working theory is maybe she thought some of this, it would get all mixed in our sessions. And so how I was billing it, I asked her, like, can you look this over and approve it? And instead of just coming back and finishing the conversation, which I would have gladly adjusted if she felt like some of those times were more used for one service versus the other, I would have adjusted the rates. But all I know was that she had signed into the spreadsheet and then she disappeared. Right. And she did it. I didn't have her on a retainer. So I had dropped other clients because she had wanted all of my time to build what she was building. Yeah. But why I'm so grateful is that my IP, everything that I've now poured into what I'm doing now and for the people I'm doing now, which my mission is to help amplify voices that have been historically marginalized. That's not who she was. So I was giving all of my time, all of my energy, all of my sense of self, and all of my sense of worth, because I didn't see myself as a business owner, but she was this highly successful business owner. And I just thought if I, rode her, or like not rode her coattails, but like if I just sort of followed around in her shadows, maybe I'd learn how to do business from this great businesswoman. So I was just willing to, when I dropped another 3K client that I had at the time to clear up my schedule for this one, only for her to ghost me the next month over I don't know what, right? Because I didn't have anything legal set up. I didn't have a retainer. I was working off an Excel spreadsheet to bill her hours. So there was a lot of learning for me in that process. But that's why I say it massively shifted how I've approached building my actual business and who I'm serving now and the ways I'm serving in ways I'm so grateful for.
That's awesome. Oh yeah, it's kind of related, but what's coming up for me, just something that's kind of top of mind at the moment. They hear this term where you say you shouldn't ever do work for your friends. You shouldn't ever, and and there's reasons for that. But just recently, I seem to be asked to do a lot of work in the marketing business for friends. And actually, I mean, we haven't completed the project yet, so I might have to come back and say, actually, no, it was a fucking disaster. Don't ever work with friends. But what I noticed it does, and not that I would, and not that I'm not as caring around other clients or whatever, but it really, really laser focuses you on, right, I've got to deliver value. Certainly for me, like, so I'm way more kind of like, you know, like, I've really got to deliver here. I'm not gonna. There's no way they're gonna pay for something that they don't really need. There's no way. Do you know what I mean? They're just gonna get a really good service. That's the plan. Anyways, and it's like, okay, yeah, maybe it took me longer. Maybe it took me a little bit longer to work out the proposals and do it stuff. But what I've really enjoyed about it is we talk about being present with our work. I've been like so like focused on, right, what's the problem they're trying to solve? How can I solve it for them? How can I be paid a fair amount? Do you know what I mean? That I'm able to do the work to a high standard. And it's just a really nice, and really, you should be doing that for everyone. But sometimes,
Exactly.
you should, of course, you should be doing that for everyone. But of course, you know, sometimes if you work, certainly if you work in like low ticket environments and you get lots of customers coming in, you go, okay, what's the template? What do I need to do? You know, kind of bish bash bosh. And that's okay to an extent, I suppose. But I guess it's all about how much you charge and stuff. But I don't know, it's just been an interesting insight for me to really look at offering value. So yeah, I'll let you know how those projects go. Anyway, so but I think they'll be good.
Yeah, for sure. It reminds me, I actually was just in a Threads conversation today with a pretty well-known coach who wrote something about like solopreneurship is overrated because actually there's so much benefit to having a team, like not just from a business standpoint, you might lose some profit that you could make if you were a solopreneur, but just in making it more meaningful, right? Working with others. And I contributed to the conversation that it's not only more meaningful to work in community, but it's also resistance of colonial paradigms, right? And who we have to become to maintain those close relationships and working with a team. So that it reminds me of what you're saying, like working with our friends. It's not just the service and the business. Like, I think probably the motivation behind you being more aware of the value you're delivering is because you value the relationship. So you're also nurturing the relationship, not just the project or the work, right?
Yeah.
And I think that that brings everything we do into higher alignment, and that brings all of us into deeper community, and that it's a checks and balance system to make sure we're not exploiting anyone, we're not taking advantage of everyone, we're not, we're tapping into our deepest potential and serving to our greatest capacity. Like, I think that there's only greater good that can come from finding more ways in our life to be relational and to be in community and have the people that will hold us accountable and have the people who will catalyze our growth in everything. I think it's just such a capitalistic colonizing trend to say keep your work and your intimate relationships or your close circles separate.
Yeah, I suppose and I just wanted to add on that because I was reflecting. I was like, God, that sounds really bad now because like the people who aren't my friends, they're getting a shit service. It's not that. What it is it's like, for me, actually, it's almost, I think the big thing is expectations. So like this is what you can expect, because that takes a lot of work as well. Like you nailing the specification of what you're going to be doing for someone. It really makes you think, actually, the last thing I want, because of this relationship, the last thing I want is them to over expect something and I not deliver on that. So the stakes are so high because you know them. It's like, okay, this is what I'm going to do, like, and Yeah. So I just wanted to sort of like wrap that up with the kind of the wider point. Okay,
Yeah.
Joey.
Yes,
This has
Jason.
been lovely.
It's been so good.
So I wanted to ask you. We're gonna wrap up now. So I've started this. What I hope will become a tradition on the podcast, in asking my guests to deliver let us know a question or a prompt or a self-reflecting question. Two. The first one is that they need to hear right now at the moment, at the start of the day. What's that question or reflection for you? And secondly, to your or my audience, one a useful prompt or reflection that they can utilize.
Okay. I'll start with the one to your audience, and I'm going to echo a question I asked earlier in the podcast, and I'm going to invite everyone to actually spend some time with it when we were speaking about manifestation. What is the thing that is taking up space and it is not of service to you and your future self? What is that thing that you are holding on to, that you have been attached to, and that has been keeping you where you are at and keeping whatever thing, action, opportunity in your future, it's been keeping it right there at the door because it is taking up all the space. Can you identify it, name it, and release it to call in or manifest the thing that's meant for you and waiting for you? So that's my question to you and the audience.
Tactfully.
And then I'll offer the question. Yeah.
Sorry.
Yes.
Tactfully. So I'm going to sit there. I'm going to reflect on. I'm going to listen to Joey's beautiful words and reflect on this. What the signs we're looking for? Is it like an instinct? Is it like maybe you're going to have to sit there for 10 minutes, like focusing on your breath, and then kind of like what comes in? Is it a bit of both? Are there any sort of actual tools and tactics to tease out that question, to quiz out that answer? Sorry.
Short answer, yes, there are tools and tactics. I could offer a lot, but probably not in the scope of right now. So the other answer I will offer is holding that question long enough to get an answer is one method. And it don't mean in one single moment. So if it doesn't come to you in the first time that you meditate on it, how much can you invite that question back in? And how many weeks or months are you willing to dialogue with that question? And the tools, techniques, tactics that I would offer all redirect you to finding your true voice, which means that you have to let go of other voices that are overriding your voice. Because if you ask your higher self that question, and if you are familiar enough with your true voice, you will get an answer to the question when you're ready.
I'd like to offer a couple of suggestions as well. The first one is like super slightly geeky, but like, so I just put it in my notes and put a reminder. So I have a few things. So I'll like set it to recur, like, I don't know, every 2 days, every 7 days, whatever. And that's kind of like, even if you just swipe it away every time, but one time you might just think about it for a minute and swipe it away. You're kind of like priming your nervous system to kind of like, that's just popping in every now and then.
Yeah.
And like the way I think of it is, it's almost like, I do a lot of training. And when we're doing training to be the best athlete we can be, we do different things. So we might do sets of low reps for strength. We might do sets of high reps for hypertrophy. We might do long zone 2 cardio sessions for endurance. And it's all for this like bigger picture. And I guess what you can do is we can use multiple tools. So you might need to sit and look at a wall for 60 minutes. Or you might just need to like go What's the instinct? What comes in? Let's just think of it really quick. You know, there's different, like, I guess there's, depending on our personality types and how deep these things are buried, we might need to approach them differently.
Journal it out,
Yeah,
dialogue with people in your life, follow trends.
And actually there's an interesting one in kind of like utilizing it's almost like, you'll probably know the term for it, but it's like what do they call it? Like it's almost like reverse psychology on yourself. So you know when you do a meditation, they tell you to stop focusing on anything and just think about whatever you want. And usually that's the bit where your mind becomes the most blank, because you're giving yourself the freedom to go, if you want to think. Do you know what I mean? And usually you don't, because you've been given permission. So a useful one is like that reflection. Ask the question, but try not to answer it. And like, in terms of your dialogue in your head, just try to feel it and don't actually try to answer it.
Yes.
But then you're instinctively, because we like to push up against stuff, you're there trying to, no, I need to answer it. And like, it's, do you know what I mean? Like, so
for sure.
Yeah, interesting. Yes.
Did you want the answer to the second question?
I would love the answer to the second question.
Are you happy with this?
No, it's great.
The second question is the question that I need to hear myself right now.
Yep.
This question emerged for me a couple of days ago in my morning sadhana or meditation. I don't know if you can connect with this, or if anyone out there can connect with this. It might feel a little esoteric, but the question presented to me was, how can you become more home for others? How can you become more home for others? And the realization in that is, I can be a little bit hard. I can be a little bit not a comfortable space for the people who live closest to me, like my husband and my children. I can be a little bit demanding, which I don't know if others can relate, but one of the side effects, I think, of doing self-development work that really needs to be refined out in the journey is this sort of like, I'm better than you because I do all this work and I wake up at 4:45 and I meditate and I help all these people, blah, 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 blah. And it shows up in really covert ways.
Sorry, I'm not laughing at you. I'm just laughing because it's so funny. Like, because
I get it.
Yeah, I get it. Like, you know, I mean, I've actually started dating someone, but I'm not. But I think about, all the self-development work, and I'm doing it on my own with no one around. And I'm like, I'm such a I'd be such a great husband and all this, but I'm not living in it. And also, there's that, you're like, oh, this is self-development and meditation and all this over here. And then there's, that's just my family. So I wasn't poking fun at it. I just thought it was funny because I'm sure loads of people can relate. So.
I think that having a sense of humor about ourselves and one another is so helpful, right? It's something we should, when I see it, I laugh because I'm like, of course I'm still like, that's still what I have to see and let go of, and not work so hard to change, just see it, notice it. And the question for me is, how can I be more home for others? I have been so focused on finding my way home, and I still think it's valuable. It's very valuable, and I help guide others to find their way home, write their way home, speak their way home. But how can that now expand to just be home? Like, home is somewhere where you just kick up your feet.
Yeah.
You fart out loud. You don't care what anyone thinks. How can you be that safe, comfortable space for everybody else where they don't have to perform or live up to anything or whatever, right?
Yeah.
Just chill.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just brought something up for me now. Yeah, that's cool. It's so cool. I knew you'd have the best questions, the best prompts, because I see a lot of the ones that you do on your Instagram. All right, so now I'd like you to be as selfish as possible. I want you to tell people where they can find you. I want you to tell them why they should contact you, how you can help them, and yeah, plug away, please.
My Instagram handle is at Dr. Joey Liu. My website is drjoeyliu.com. You can find me either of those ways, most probably immediately. I offer workshops. I actually offer a lot of things for free, but I also offer partnerships. So I do coaching as well. If that feels like something that could be catalyzing for you in your life, I still have some spaces, and I'm opening up a few more opportunities. Next year, 2025 is going to be kind of exciting. I have some books coming out and some self-paced courses as well, so that more people can tap in and do their story work.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you so much. It's been lovely catching up and offering all these insights. And I'm such a huge fan of everything that you do, and you are a beautiful presence in this world. So thank you for your time today.
Thank you so much, Jason. It's always an honor. I love our conversations. I appreciate your vulnerability. I find so much meaning in this, and I value our friendship deeply. I'm so glad that Instagram brought us together so randomly, and that this relationship continues.
Thank you. Hey guys, it's me. Thank you so much for watching that episode, and congratulations for making it all the way to the end. I really appreciate it. A few things before you get going. If you haven't already, please do subscribe. And if you enjoyed this episode, the kindest thing you can do for me is to share it with a friend or family member. Don't forget to check out the show notes for links to both my guests and myself. And if you made it this far, why don't you drop me a DM?